I shivered as I felt the warmth of his body soak into me, and drew in a deep breath, my heart vibrating rapidly within my chest. It wasn't a shiver from cold, or fear, it was one triggered by an immense feeling of blissful contentment. I slowly lifted my eyes to meet his own, finding love and a feeling of security in those brilliant green eyes. A kind gentle smile formed on his lips as he returned my gaze. He lowered his head to gently kiss me, pulling me closer with one hand around my waist. I remember first seeing him. I had been out late walking on my quiet street one warm, foggy night. He had stood underneath a streetlight, immersed in the warm orange glow reflected off the fog. He had given me a sad smile, gazing at me with eyes full of kindness. Sadness grasped his smile, I knew, because he seemed to see through my own eyes into my soul. And in my soul, he must have seen the memories. The blood, gushing from slashes across my wrist and forearms, pooling on the floor where I had dizzily slumped down onto. The red and blue lights, the piercing siren. The worried looks on the concerned faces of the paramedics as they seemed to enter my front door in a hazy, foggy slow-motion half-run. The bright fluorescent lights in the hospital hallway. The hands of the doctor as they moved over my arms, stitching up the self-inflicted wounds. I knew from the tight embrace he had then drawn me into that my suffering was soon leaving. It was as if he had been placed on the earth by the gods for that very reason. He seemed to know how I wanted it to end. And that's how I found myself back in my hose, nude, in my bedroom, in a standing cuddle with him, our bare chest pressed together, kissing as if it were the end of the world. For me, it was. I felt his hand move from my waist and a moment later, his fingers pressed up against my lips. I felt the pill slide over my tongue, saliva gathering to wash it down my throat. It didn't leave a bitter taste, but a lemon-y, citrus-y aftertaste. Warmth soaked through my veins, embracing me from within. Sleep eased over me as I felt his lips once again touch my own in a tender kiss. He then gently kissed my neck and held me closer to his nude, warm body. I felt sleep take hold as I lowered my head to bury it in his chest. One last pulse of warmth from within my body, from my soul to my mind, from heart to fingertips, and then my corpse went limp in his arms. The man lowered the corpse to the bed, covering it with sheets and a blanket, propping its head on a pillow, as if the corpse was just sleeping. He dressed and left the room. In the hallway, at the top of the stairs, he stopped, producing a lighter from his pocket. A quick flick of his thumb ignited a wavering, orange flame. Kneeling, he touched the flame to the hall carpet. By the time he had went out the front door into the midnight rain, the flame had blossomed into a consuming fury. Glass shattered from the intense heat as the house was engulfed. The top floor partially collapsed, sending a blizzard of sparks into the raindrops. Fire trucks wailed past as the man strolled down the street away from the inferno. The sirens grew distorted as the air rushed around his body. A fog consumed his mind as he reached the streetlight he had appeared under only hours earlier. The glow from it faded as reality shifted and flickered. He closed his eyes as rushing wind swallowed his body. When he opened his eyes, only seconds later, the street he had just been on was now replaced by a different street, in a different city. The western sky was bleeding onto the horizon and cityscape below. Enough darkness had gathered for the streetlight he now stood beneath to flicker on. Puddles covered the empty street from an earlier rainfall, reflecting the red sky that burned through the rapidly vanishing storm clouds. He glanced down the street at the sound of footsteps, seeing a young woman coming close to where he stood. He gave a soft, kind smile and their eyes met. Sadness crept into his mind as her memories washed over his thoughts. The feeling of suffocation as a rope roughly twisted around her neck, the sensation of tears running down her cheek as she collapsed to the ground, the breath that shakily filled her lungs as her fingers scratched at her neck, loosening the rope, the despair and numbness and indifference that fell on someone who has failed to end it all. And as she gave him a sad smile, he pulled her into an embracing, hugging her close to his body. In that moment, as the warmth flooded their bodies, he felt her desire, now stronger than ever. As desire for the pain to all end, for her suffering to resolve. Somehow, he sensed that she knew that he was the one to grant her that one final wish, as if that was his one mission on earth, that he could hive a way out to those who never belonged. As if he, standing under that streetlight, was some savior. And he was, that was why he stood under the warm glow, holding her tight. It was the same reason he had greeted the man under the other streetlight barely hours ago. And the thousands of others who had felt his embrace under warm glows from streetlights. He was a streetlight savior. He gently tipped her head back with a soft hand under her jaw and brought his lips to kiss hers. And as their lips broke contact, he gazed deep into her weary yet stunning blue eyes, seeing her final wish already unfold from a dream into reality. It began with her eyes, turning from that brilliant blue to an ashen gray. Her skin began to morph as well, turning gray, slowly disintegrating into ash. He knew she wouldn't be feeling any pain. None of them ever did. Her body finally collapsed in a cloud of ash, caught up in the breeze. As he watched, the ashes began flickering orange and it was as if they had grown wings. Soon, hundreds of flickering fireflies lit up the air around him. And then they were gone, flying away up into the gathering stars as if on their way to carry a soul to the afterlife. And if anyone glanced from their window, they would have seen a flicker and shimmer in the air underneath the streetlight as the man vanished, already won his way to be another person's savior.